Here we go. Welcome everyone to today's Top Leaders Live. I'm Jen Anderson and I'm on a mission to help tech leaders become the tech leader that everyone wants to work for. You are seeing this kind gentleman with me here on the show today, and this is a guest of mine who actually had the opportunity to be one of my coaching clients. And so Adrian, I'm so glad that you could come on and join me today on today's Top Leaders.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
So good. Thank you so much. So a little bit about Adrian, and then we're going to delve into this conversation around Adrian and some metamorphosis that's happened for him in his career around personal brands specifically. So Adrian currently serves as Managing Director, Global Head of Quality Engineering for S&P Global Rating Services. In his role, he is responsible for leading a global QA team, evolving QA strategy, advancing automation, expanding test coverage, and enriching staff development. In nearly 18 years at S&P, Adrian has filled a number of data and technology roles, including responsibilities in program management, IT risk and compliance, data operations, data quality, and IT vendor management. Adrian holds certifications of Six Sigma BPM Green Belt, the TMMI Professional, and Scrum Master. He attained his BA in Economics from Boston College and an MBA of Finance and Operations Management from the NYU Stern School of Business. His personal brand statement is possibilities and opportunities. And thanks again, Adrian, for taking this opportunity to join me for this conversation. So good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, so good to have you on. So, all right, well, I just read this big, enormous bio about you, right? Like all these things that you're doing. And so one thing that I want to jump right into, because we're definitely going to do a deep dive in this conversation around personal brand. What does personal brand mean to you?
Yeah, so personal brand is, well, it has become, I should say, sort of my identifier, and it represents the strengths that I feel that I act on as a leader. But it also represents how I live my life personally too. So it goes beyond just professional. My statement of possibilities and opportunities is an outlook that I also share with my family as we work through different things as well.
I love that. I love it because as a coach, I'm always telling people your personal brand has to include your personal life and your business life.
Absolutely.
And so often I see people who come my way and they think of personal brand in their business life only.
Yeah. I think we iterated through some of those, right? It's a learning curve. Yeah, but absolutely, it helps you sort of live that personal brand and feel that personal brand if it applies to more of your life than, even though we spend the majority of our life at work,
right.
to the total picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so good. So, and it's easier to be that whole person, right? Instead of switching gears, be like, oh wait, today's Monday. Now I'm going to be this version, right?
Exactly.
This is like, oh, it's Saturday morning. I get to be this version of me. It's like, oh, way too exhausting. Just be the same person consistently.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love it. So your personal brand is possibilities and opportunities. So can you give us an example of how that is actually showing up in your business world, right? Give an example of how that shows up today.
Sure. Yeah. Possibilities. So this is an outlook too that I try to share with my team members as well, whether it's my direct reports or skip levels, right? We talk about possibilities. For me, it's innovating, right? It's that spirit of innovation that there's always another possible path. So we were constantly actually looking at for example, our test automation in the QA space, right? So, and it thrills me when the teams come up and innovate their own new methods of automating. They found a potential solution to a problem they had that didn't exist before. And so they're always looking for those possibilities, and that's I think foundational to growth, both personal as well as in the professional space. By doing that, right, we've been able to get contributions from many of our team members and expand our automation framework, um, to cover, all sorts of permutations and all sorts of combinations of things that we need to address for quality at S&P. Opportunities, though, opportunities need to balance the possibilities, right? So you have sky's the limit on possibilities, but opportunities, you need to be able to identify what are the right ones to pursue, in order to reach a target outcome. So you need to be selective, right? Time is an asset, right? You have to choose where you spend it. So for example, and I say this to the team all the time, it's okay if a lot of the ideas wind up on the cutting room floor, right? The best ones usually make their way to reality, to production, right? To what we want to see. So again, I think using the automation example, right? A lot of innovations, and sometimes we come back and say, well, yeah, that's something that all the teams can use, or only some of the teams can use, or maybe we have a different approach someone else is taking. So we bring them together and we look at both of those, and which is the better opportunity, which scales for more of the team. So that's why I think possibilities, opportunities. It gives me that balance that I like of innovation, but still operational execution that you need, to deliver and to keep the teams focused.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think about how there could be another person watching us, also a tech leader. They could even be in a QA, like that could be in their function, and they might think, well, yeah, sure, we'll look at possibilities too. We're gonna look at different and options and whatnot. So, what is it about those words for you specifically, possibilities and opportunities, that really resonates with your heart, where you're like, yes, that's what I want my brand to be?
Yeah, I think another sort of words that came to my mind when we were doing the brand development was continuous improvement. So it's also something that near and dear to me for many years. One, as a personal work ethic, right? When I'm working on something, and if I struggle, then what went wrong? What can I improve on? How can I do it better? And then working with teams, right? Making sure that we connect with them, we relate to them, we help them develop. Um, Espousing this theory of continuous improvement, right? And thinking about, okay, well, what went wrong, right? What are the opportunities, right? How might you fix it? What are the possibilities, right? What's the right fit? How do you develop that? How do you iterate that? How do you keep getting better? How do you learn from what went wrong so that in the future you're more successful? So for me, again, that's been personal, even back in the time when I did the Six Sigma green belts, right? And that's a very methodical process to it. But once you start coaching teams and coaching junior people in your team, and you're watching them grow and develop, continuous improvement is something that you continue to demonstrate to them and articulate to them. And I think for me, that's another way of saying possibilities and opportunities. But possibilities and opportunities, for those not familiar with continuous improvement, that sounds a little too techy, right? Possibilities and opportunities is something that I can explain to my kids, right? They don't,
Good.
9 and 12, they don't understand continuous improvement, but I can bring possibilities and opportunities home.
Yeah, right, exactly. I can just see
Yeah,
like, okay, 12-year-old. So what's going to be the continuous improvement of your writing skills, or insert whatever, right?
that's right, right. Yeah.
I know, I was just thinking about that, of how is possibilities and opportunities showing up in Adrian Thibodeau's personal life? Do you have an example
So,
of something that's kind of fun that way to exemplify?
fun. We do a lot of cooking at home, and I'm always encouraging the kids to try something new. So there's definitely lots of possibilities, and only a few of those you want to select as a real opportunity, right? There's a lot of combinations you can throw in the pot, but yeah,
Right. And then still be able to eat it,
they'll
right?
be able to eat it. Yeah, yeah. That outcome really matters. So
Right. Oh, I love that. That is so good. Oh my goodness. I appreciate that so much. Years ago, when I attended a funeral of a gentleman who'd passed away, and his son and a friend and his older brother spoke at his funeral. It was a eulogy situation. And his son talked about how his dad was always encouraging him and his siblings. They owned a painting company where they painted like inside of homes and whatnot. And so his dad was always like, let's do it right. Let's do it properly. Great customer service, right? Like it would just, but he always had this thing about him of like, what's really the right thing to do? And he would often use the word, let's be genuine about our effort and what we're doing. And then his brother talked about when they were little, their dad owned a gas station, and that was back in the 50s, where people would come out with like a rag, and they would like clean the mirror, clean off your headlights while they're pumping your gas and stuff. Right? That seems so old timey, right? But like it was not that long ago that stuff existed. Yep. And this gentleman, when he was a little kid, as a 5-year-old, his job was to have a rag and go and clean the headlights off of these cars, because he wasn't old enough to really operate like the gas pump stuff, right? And so but his older brother said even at an age of 5, he was so genuine about his effort. And then the friend who spoke actually is my father-in-law, talked about how when they moved into the neighborhood, they were just great neighbors right away and just had that very genuine feel. And so I'm here in the audience there with my husband and my in-laws and whatnot for this funeral. I never met the guy. He died about, I don't know, maybe three weeks after we got married. So I never met him, but he was a lifelong friend. And I'm sitting there in the pew in church, bouncing up and down going, oh my gosh, this guy's brand is genuine. Like this is his brand, right? And so I just think about that and what a beautiful story, for everybody. It didn't matter if it was a new neighbor, it was a sibling, his kids, like whatever, they all saw him being that way. And I share that story because I think about you, with what you're doing to, instill those possibilities and what are the opportunities and how, and so I'm just curious, how is that adjusted, maybe even being aware of that, Adrian? How's it adjusted the wording that you're using, even with your kiddos?
It's a journey, right? So it's getting comfortable with sort of it's integrating that phrase into conversations, right? And it depends on the conversation how it's going, but it's a great opener. If you're meeting someone for the first time and maybe they don't know your business, but you're trying to sort of talk about yourself, right? You're trying to ground your conversation or your introduction and what is it about you. But that takes practice. There's some opportunities where I've been able to leverage it and some that I haven't. Afterwards, I'm like, oh, that would have been a great opportunity to open with. Yeah. With the kids, right? I think it's acting on the behavior that's represented by possibilities and opportunities. And I told them about my coaching journey, right? So they all know I went through, and so they know what those words mean. But I think for like the kids and the family, it's demonstrating that attitude. Not that I'm opening a conversation with the 9-year-old about, hey, remember possibilities and opportunities, right? But yeah, and I say it takes practice. It's like muscle memory. It's like everything else, right? Make personal brand part of who you are, and it's already if you nailed the personal brand the way you want to, it's already how you behave. It's just a matter of it's a sort of a wrapper, a label that you can put out there to help break the ice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of the label, right? And so and I sometimes think about how like we're inside the bottle, like the ketchup bottle, we're the ketchup inside, and we can't see the label on the outside. Everybody else can see the label, right? But we can't see it. So, but they're all seeing. So what is that label that you're putting out there first, that you're leading out with, so that people don't think you're sriracha instead of ketchup or something, right?
Don't want to make that mistake. Yeah.
Right, for sure. So good. I love hearing how this is showing up for you even in your personal life. So what are you noticing about the personal brand of the people that you're interacting with, like at work and whatnot?
So it's interesting, those who've done a similar journey, then when you share your personal brand, they'll share theirs. It's kind of like a secret language, right? Some people are familiar with it and some are curious about it. That's a lot of questions they get. Oh, that's interesting. You said your personal brand. How did you arrive at that, right? And I've talked about, right, the journey to get there really started with, working with you and the strengths finders, right? And identifying the strengths that you already practice, right? But, again, putting a sort of a label to them, a descriptor to them. And then, thinking about that and thinking about how you work professionally and how you interact in your personal life and coming up with that personal brand that really represents you. So when you're interacting with people who know about it, then it's almost instantaneous. They know what it means and how to use it.
Cool.
Those who don't know usually ask how you got there, and that opens up a conversation anyway that you wanted to have about what your strengths are and
Mhm.
why that's your personal brand. So it kind of works both ways.
Nice.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. I love that because and I love that you're being that light for other people too, Adrian, to say this is what it is, right? Just sitting in this space of this is me. What you need to know about Adrian Thibodeau is
Mm,
possibilities and opportunities,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so and then have you noticed with like some of the people that you've worked with for a long time, like because at S&P, you've been there for a minute, right? And so now that you're weaving that into conversations, I'm just curious what you've noticed, how that may have changed anything for you.
So I haven't, so that's a good question. I've been trying to weave them into conversations with new people that I'm meeting. It's interesting. I should try that on some people that I've worked with for a long time. I haven't tried that yet.
Okay.
See if I catch them. Yeah.
Yeah, good, awesome. Here I am,
Yeah.
still coaching you, giving you a homework assignment. There
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go.
that's a good homework assignment. Yeah. That's
Good.
good
Yeah.
practice though. Like I said, it's like muscle memory. So getting
Uh,
used to um being comfortable working that in, right? Because you're used to people ask you who you are and you start down your resume, right? And
yes.
right, the introduction.
Mhm.
Um and it's a little as anything else, it's a little awkward at first to get used to it, but then you try to lead with the personal brand.
Yeah, yeah, I just enjoy that so much. And I'm curious then when you're on the other side of the table and somebody else shares with you their personal brand, what has that done for you in your mind about that person?
So they must have had Jen as a coach. Yeah.
They were another victim and they turned out okay. It was all right.
Yeah, it tunes me into now I'm listening as they describe. I'm listening from the perspective of their personal brand statement, right? If they told me something, like Nike has like just do it, right? So if I'm sitting, I'm going to be listening as they're talking about it. Oh, this person seems to be action oriented or something, right? So it really it puts you in a frame of listening that's a little bit different than you would have if you're just listening to a sort of them reciting their resume kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool. And then are you able to see it in action too, other than just the words that they're saying?
Thinking a few examples. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think people who I've interacted with who picked their labels, picked their brand statements, did a pretty good job. So,
Nice.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. I'm happy to see that. And so obviously there's an opportunity to interact with their family, friends, coworkers, all those situations that you're dealing with, new people that are coming on board. What have you been noticing around personal brand for yourself, like online, for example? Like I know you like LinkedIn, so has it helped you in anything there?
Yeah, so we put it up as a background on LinkedIn, right? I think that's a good visual cue, right? And then I think again, for those who know, then it's instantaneous. I think it's a good intro. I've tried to work in some of the strengths as well into my description of who I am in LinkedIn because I think that's a powerful statement as well.
Yes.
People understand, and again, maybe it's folks who know StrengthsFinder, it resonates with them. But even if they don't, I think it's enough to raise curiosity and say, oh, you know, it's interesting. Responsibility and context and arranger. What are these things, right? So I think it's a great way of introducing, who you are, because when we did sort of that StrengthsFinder question set, you're kind of answering those questions honestly based on your on how you read them and how you operate. So it's a pretty good reflection
Mhm.
of who you are. Yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. I love that
yeah,
you just said the honestly part about it because I think
yeah.
sometimes people answer these assessments and they're like, well, I think they want to hear this, so I'll put that. But
Yeah, never do that. Never do that. and I liked it on LinkedIn too. It adds something to your page, right? It's otherwise it's just stock photos and plain backgrounds, right? So
Mhm.
it's cool.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, I love it. I love that on your brand that you've got a dry erase marker.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's in my background here. It's a white wall, but
Yeah.
usually in the office, right? I always had dry erase boards around me. So you talk about sort of the act of working through possibilities and opportunities. Many of my years was done on a dry erase board. So
Yeah.
since COVID, I have a little one here in the office at home, but it's not the same as when we all gathered around, right? So we try to do that more virtually now, but that
Nice.
dry erase marker is definitely a good representation. Yeah,
Yes, right. Oh my gosh, for sure. You got to change one of those walls in your home office, right? Just put up
just
those
make
big
it.
monster boards.
They have that paint now where you can draw on it. So
Yeah,
maybe we should.
there you
Yeah,
go. Good, good. You could rope the kids into
that's
helping you.
it. That's it.
I love it. So good. And then, so we're talking about, peers and whatnot. What about like in circumstances where you've got maybe a new boss or whatever? What's happened for you in that area?
Yeah, so we have I've new leadership and new colleagues as well. So one of the opportunities I had to use my personal brand was one of our first team introduction sessions, and we were doing journey maps, and we were sharing our highs and lows of our life and our career. And um as I'm drawing out the journey map for myself, I realized, right, this is a great opportunity, possibilities and opportunities, because it kind of brought together some things that I wanted to highlight, right? These were opportunities and where I took a chance on something. These were places where, we thought outside the box a little bit. This represents one of my favorite pieces of my career, which has been being a team leader, working with junior staff and sort of progressing
Mm.
how we operate as a QA group. So to me, that was all embodied there in possibilities and opportunities. So that was a nice way of explaining that to the team.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
yeah, and some questions again, as I said before, sometimes people hear and they say, "Oh, that's interesting. How did you get a personal brand? Like, where did that come from?" So
Mhm.
it opens up the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And I love to see just this throughput of it continuing to be something supportive to you. I love how you talked about it brings you some clarity around how you want to proceed and how you want to approach stuff, but
Yeah,
helping to steer that conversation of the greater whole, like with these new peers that you have, right? And
right.
so, and from an organizational standpoint, those who are outside of S&P are not aware of the fact that you directly report to the CTO. You're up pretty high level when it comes to tech leadership. You've got a lot of people you're crossing paths with. And so I love that now you've got this in your mind of possibilities and opportunities and
Yeah,
steering toward that. It's
yeah.
really, really amazing. Um, what else would you want tech leaders to know about personal brand?
It's an investment in yourself. So I'll say personal brand is significant for me because I spent a lot of my career, I guess, heads down working like many people are, and you never really picked your head up and looked around at what sort of you were doing or what your strengths are or what you enjoy or what you want to improve. So personal brand, the exercise of getting to the personal brand itself is a good journey, because you don't just pick some words and go with it, right? It's kind of a refinement process. So for me, that was a career recognition too, and it helped me to sort of bring some focus around that. I'd say the other thing is if it works for you, it takes practice. It takes practice to learn to use it and to trust it, right? And maybe if you don't, then maybe you don't have the right personal brand. You go back and tweak it a little bit. Maybe it's not totally representative of you. Um, but I think it's well worth doing. I think a lot of times especially in technology, folks view us as strictly tech. But right, there's so much more to us as leaders in technology, and personal brand is your opportunity to put something out there, a descriptor of yourself that doesn't just say engineer or QA or,
Yes.
PM, right? So
Right.
that's a great opportunity to say, this is who I am as a person and as a leader, and this is how I like to operate.
Mhm. So true. You're so much more than a job title,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how
Yeah.
you're showing up in that. So good. Adrian, thank you so much for
Of
coming on
course.
to talk with me on today's top leaders. It's really, it's, it's my joy. And I get so much satisfaction helping people to determine what their personal brand is. And then now also to see how you're leveraging it and you're using it online and in person and in family and work and whatnot. And so I'm over here, I'm just like, yahoo, this is awesome. Keep doing it. And so then that way, you just, I love it. Thank you for being that example and that light for what you're doing with it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jen. So like I said, stick with it, everyone. It's well worth an investment, and it's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And for those who are listening to this and are interested in needing some help in determining that personal brand and how you're going to leverage it, get in touch with me. Go to movingforwardsolutions.com. And on the top left corner, there's a Let's Talk button. Let's connect and talk about what we can do to help you so that you can also have awesome success like my friend Adrian is having. Thank you so much, my friends. I'll see you next time on today's Top Leaders.